Bonjour mes enfants, c'est votre Uncle Dan. It's your Uncle Dan, the Vinyl Man, back with another episode of Uncle Dan's Vintage Vinyl. And I'm going to be kind of freestyling it today. I'm going to tell you about how Uncle Dan kind of got into vintage vinyl. Kind of, because I was into vintage vinyl already, but what really got me into this kick, I bought back several months ago. I found near me an Onkyo turntable for sale at a very good price, $40 in fact. And I called the guy, went that night to pick up the turntable, and when I was there, he told me that he had a bunch of classical vinyl that he'd be willing to sell me. And so I looked at it, and rather than trying to make a per disc, I said, look, I'll give you this much for the whole stack of stuff. And we made a deal, and I took it home. And a lot of it was classical. All of it was dirty. A lot of it was classical, but there was mixed in with it some kind of popular stuff from the 60s and early 70s. It looked like somebody had maybe been collecting through the 50s into the early 70s. And then it stopped collecting. He'd picked it up from an estate sale somewhere. Anyway, I started going through it and was listening to the classical, and I was ignoring the other stuff. The stuff that looked like easy listening and looked to me like some jazz that I wasn't interested in. But then I picked up an old Gerard Synchrolab 75 turntable, and at first it wouldn't work, but after I got it working, I thought, well, I need to try it out on something that the stylus looked okay, but I wasn't sure. So I thought, okay, I'm going to try this out on one of these albums out of this batch that I'm not sure is any good. So I pulled out from the batch this album, Nancy Wilson, How Glad I Am. And it looked like it was going to be, to me, kind of, it looked like it was going to be boring standards. And so I put it on the old Synchrolab 75 and started listening to it. And I immediately realized that, I listened to it and I was like, this sounded kind of good. I listened to it longer and I thought, this just sounded like really, really good. For one thing, the Synchrolab sounded good. And for the other, it seemed to me that Nancy Wilson was sounding great. So I listened to the album. It was kind of dirty at first, and I cleaned it by listening to it over and over again and playing, cleaning it, clean play. And eventually it started sounding pretty good. It sounded really good in terms of the sound quality of the album, and I loved the Synchrolab 75 for $40. Probably the best turntable purchase I've ever made. That old Synchrolab 75. So I started. There was another album in there. There were actually a couple of other albums in there that I really liked. Gloria Lynn. And Ramsey Lewis Trio, and I'm going to talk about both of those in later episodes. The Ramsey Lewis Trio, and all those. I looked at them, and I've been like, this is not going to be stuff I'm going to be interested in. And I was wrong. So I started listening to other stuff and said, I'm just going to open the old ears up and just listen to it for what it is. And that's how I started getting into a lot of the old stuff. And it's only been the last few months that I've really done that. But I've been a big Dylan fan, a big blues fan. I've got a bunch of blues, and otherwise kind of roots rock, that sort of thing, and jazz. But in jazz, I'd like people like I'd been really fond of people like Lee Morgan, Ornette Coleman, whom I love, and Sun Ra. People like that. But I started listening to stuff that was kind of less challenging in a way, but it's still great stuff. Anyway, Nancy Wilson I highly recommend. So now I have this one, and it's just a great album. And I picked up others. I picked up some others, and I'm going to pick up yet more. Like in Love, this one still has the original shrink wrap. Another great album, just highly recommended. Yesterday's love songs, today's blues, man, just fabulous. She had such a fine voice, without a lot of melisma or anything like that. Just the individual notes sound good. This is Something Wonderful, and I can't remember whether this is her first album or not. But this is another just great album. And I can put these on and just let them go on the on a turntable. Some of the automatics, some of the changers, you can just set where they'll just play over and over again. And if I'm just bopping around the house, I can put on some Nancy Wilson, and I've listened to them a bunch of times now, but I listen to them and they'll come into mind as I'm going, and it's just like, oh yeah, this is great. But great albums. And if you think those standards are uninteresting, no. And the recording quality, the pressing quality is beautiful. The engineers really knew what they were doing when they were recording Nancy Wilson. She's up front and center. She's clear. Recorded pretty dry. There's not a lot of reverb, not a lot of echo on her. But her voice sounds great that way. And they give room for her voice in the arrangements. And the arrangements are great. This is one I have. This is from the 70s, I believe. I can check, but I believe this is from the 70s. And her voice was still fabulous then. The arrangements, I think, are less successful, but her voice was fabulous. She's a great musician. But anyway, highly recommended. Go out and get yourself some Nancy Wilson, and she's as good as anybody. Let's say that. So, Uncle Dan, the Vinyl Man, back with another episode of Uncle Dan's Vintage Vinyl. I'm going to ask you now at the end to like and subscribe. Let me know too, by the way. Tell me who you think. Who are some finds that I should listen to? Who are some people like that? Because there are a lot of people out there who are kind of forgotten these days. Nancy Wilson, remembered well by some, but she's not a name like Sarah Vaughan, Ella Fitzgerald, and in fact, I like her better, and I may be deemed heretical for this. I like her better than Ella Fitzgerald or Sarah Vaughan. I think she's better than either one of them, and I'd put her on a par with Nina Simone. I think she's that good. And I like Nina Simone better than Ella Fitzgerald or Sarah Vaughan. So anyway, that's Uncle Dan the Vinyl Man back with this. And let me, as always, finish by saying, Mes enfants, au revoir, et aussi à bientôt.